The hum of advanced technology was usually the background music to Janelle Brooks's life. Her house in the affluent enclave of Sterling Estates wasn't just a home, it was a quiet testament to sustainable living, a subtly integrated marvel of energy efficiency. She valued its peace, a necessary counterpoint to her demanding global career. That peace was shattered with the abrupt, jarring silence of a total power outage on a sweltering Tuesday afternoon. Not a flicker, not a brownout, but a complete cut. Her first thought was a neighborhood-wide issue, but a quick glance out the window showed her neighbor's home still gleaming with light, air conditioners humming. This was targeted. A sickening premonition coiled in her stomach. A folded notice, shoved aggressively into her mailbox, confirmed it. Final notice, power disconnection, it declared in bold, accusatory red letters. Due to persistent delinquency in HOA fee payments, services to this property have been suspended. Contact HOA President Carol Sterling for account settlement. Penalties and reconnection fees will apply. Delinquency. Janelle's HOA fees were on auto pay, drawn from an account that could buy Sterling Estates several times over. This was a fabrication, a malicious lie. She walked across the perfectly manicured lawn to Carol Sterling's equally perfect, though far more ostentatious house. Carol, a woman whose blonde coiffure seemed as rigidly maintained as her iron grip on the HOA, met her at the door with an expression of feigned sympathy that didn't quite mask the triumphant glint in her eyes. "Miss Brooks, so sorry it had to come to this," Carol said, her voice dripping with false concern. "But the rules are the rules. We can't have residents simply refusing to contribute their fair share. It's not fair to everyone else who pays on time." "Mrs. Sterling," Janelle began, her voice dangerously calm, "my HOA fees are fully paid. I have bank records to prove it. There seems to be a serious error." Carol waved a dismissive hand. "Oh, people always say that, dear. The records show a significant outstanding balance. Perhaps you've been a bit overextended? Until it's settled, along with the rather substantial late fees and the emergency disconnection charge, the power stays off. We have a community to think of." This was not an error. This was a deliberate act of aggression. The injustice of it, the sheer, unadulterated audacity, was breathtaking. To be plunged into darkness, to have her home crippled, based on a lie. The public shaming began almost immediately. Carol Sterling, clearly relishing her role as neighborhood enforcer, took to her golf cart and its ever-present loudspeaker. "Attention Sterling Estates residents," her voice echoed, sharp and self-righteous. "Please be aware that certain individuals who fail to meet their financial obligations to our community will face consequences. We will not tolerate freeloaders or deadbeats living off the hard work of others. Sterling Estates maintains high standards." Freeloader? Deadbeat? Janelle felt a cold fury rise within her. She, Janelle Brooks, CEO of Greenvolt Energy, a $7 billion global leader in renewable technology, was being publicly branded a common debtor by this petty tyrant. The neighborhood, or at least Carol's faction of it, seemed to lap it up. Humiliating fake past due notices and crudely drawn IOUs began appearing on Janelle's lawn, thrown there by unseen hands in the night. She'd hear snippets of conversations from passing neighbors. "Can you believe she just doesn't pay her bills? In a neighborhood like this?" one would whisper. "Carol was right to cut her power. Serves her right. People like that drag us all down." The casual cruelty, the eagerness to believe the worst, was disheartening. How could people be so quick to judge, so eager to condemn? Carol then escalated her campaign to social media, posting on the HOA's community page a public service announcement. It featured a photo of Janelle's house, subtly implying its darkness, though Janelle's backup systems were quietly handling critical needs, and a sanctimonious message about the importance of financial responsibility for all residents, and the sad necessity of taking firm action against those who refuse to contribute. The comments section was a predictable sewer of racist and classist assumptions. If she can't afford the fees, she shouldn't live there. Probably living above her means typical. Send her back to whatever slum she crawled out of. Janelle watched this unfold with a growing sense of disbelief, but also a chilling resolve. This wasn't just about unpaid fees anymore. This was a targeted campaign of harassment, likely racially motivated, designed to humiliate her and drive her out. She documented every loudspeaker announcement, every social media post, every piece of trash thrown on her lawn. Her home, a marvel of sustainable technology, was largely self-sufficient for essential power needs, thanks to her own company's cutting-edge battery storage systems and discrete solar integration. Carol and the HOA, in their ignorance, saw only a house whose main grid connection they could sever. They had no idea they were dealing with a woman who understood energy systems on a global scale, who could power a small city, let alone her own home, if she chose to. They mistook her quiet resilience for weakness. During this period, Janelle was in the final, critical stages of negotiating a multi-billion-dollar merger that would revolutionize Greenvolt's position in the Asian market. She was on secure, encrypted calls at all hours, with investment bankers in London, energy ministers in Tokyo, and her board of directors across the U.S. neighbors, alerted by Carol to keep an eye on the debtor, would see lights on at odd hours in Janelle's house, powered by her independent system, and hear her muffled, intense voice. Mrs. Gable, Carol's closest confidant and chief informant, reported, "Carol, she's up all night, making shady phone calls, whispering. It sounds like she's plotting something. Maybe she's trying to figure out how to illegally tap into the power grid. Or worse, maybe she's running some kind of scam from her house. That's why she has no money for fees." Carol, of course, presented this evidence to the HOA board as proof of Janelle's deceptive and potentially criminal nature. She pushed for immediate, drastic action. A formal letter arrived at Janelle's house, delivered by a smug-looking Carol herself. It was a demand for the immediate payment of the fabricated outstanding fees, plus a newly invented $5,000 community disruption fine and a grid tampering investigation fee. Failure to pay within 48 hours, the letter stated, would result in the HOA initiating legal proceedings to place a lien on her property and begin formal eviction proceedings. Eviction for fake debts. While they themselves had illegally cut her power, the sheer, unmitigated hypocrisy was stunning. Janelle looked at Carol Sterling, standing on her doorstep with a look of triumphant expectation. "Mrs. Sterling," Janelle said, her voice dangerously soft, "you are making a very, very serious mistake, a mistake that will have consequences you cannot possibly imagine." Carol just laughed. "Threats, Ms. Brooks? Is that all you have left? Pay up or pack up. It's that simple. This community has had enough of your games." Janelle simply looked at her, a flicker of something cold and powerful in her eyes. "Games, Mrs. Sterling? Oh, I assure you, this is no game, and it's you who has had enough rope." She closed the door, leaving Carol momentarily nonplussed by her lack of hysterics, but quickly recovering her smug certainty. Carol Sterling had no idea. She had no idea that the woman whose power she'd cut, whose name she'd slandered, whose life she was trying to ruin, was one of the most influential figures in the global energy sector. She had no idea that Janelle Brooks didn't just understand power, she created it. And the storm she was about to unleash on Carol and the Sterling Estates HOA would be of catastrophic proportions. The lights were about to come on in a way Carol Sterling could never have foreseen. The eviction threat, the fabricated debt, the public shaming, Carol Sterling's campaign against Janelle Brooks had escalated into a full-blown war of attrition. But Carol, blinded by her own petty prejudices and inflated sense of power, failed to realize she wasn't just fighting a new resident. She was poking a hornet's nest of global corporate power and razor-sharp intellect. While Carol was busy rallying her troops for the final expulsion, Janelle was on secure video conferences with a team of forensic accountants and corporate litigators from Greenvolt Energy's formidable legal department. "This isn't just harassment, Ms. Brooks," the lead counsel, a man named David Lee, had stated grimly after reviewing Janelle's meticulous documentation. The discrepancies in the HOA's utility billing for the common areas, their refusal to provide transparent accounting for the electricity fund Mrs. Sterling mentioned, combined with their targeted actions against you, this has all the hallmarks of potential financial mismanagement. possibly even embezzlement, using you as a scapegoat or distraction. Janelle had suspected as much. The HOA's finances, particularly around utilities, had always seemed opaque. Now, with her own power cut from the grid, she had a vested interest in scrutinizing them. "Get me everything, David," Janelle had instructed. "Every invoice, every payment, every transfer related to Sterling Estates energy accounts for the past 5 years. Let's see where the lights are really going out." Publicly, Janelle maintained a calm, almost detached demeanor, which Carol and her sycophants misinterpreted as fear or guilt. The power to Janelle's house remained officially cut from the city grid, a fact Carol trumpeted daily. "See, good people of Sterling Estates," Carol would announce via her loudspeaker, cruising past Janelle's home. "The freeloader remains in the dark, a testament to what happens when you don't pay your dues. Let this be a lesson." What Carol and the gossiping neighbors didn't realize was that Janelle's house was anything but dark. Thanks to Greenvolt's most advanced, silent, integrated solar and battery storage system, a custom installation that was virtually invisible from the outside, her home hummed along with full power. Lights blazed, air conditioning cooled, her high-tech security system functioned flawlessly. In fact, she was probably the only resident in Sterling Estates with truly uninterruptible, clean power. Neighbors would whisper, "How is she still using her appliances?" "I saw her porch light on last night," Mrs. Gable, Carol's chief informant, reported with wide eyes. "Carol, she must be stealing electricity, tapping into someone else's line. Or maybe she's got one of those noisy, illegal generators hidden somewhere." Carol, of course, seized on this. "Illegal power siphoning, another crime to add to her list," she declared at an impromptu HOA safety meeting on her lawn. She dispatched HOA inspectors, her husband and a reluctant board member, to try and find Janelle's illicit power source. But they found nothing but a beautifully maintained, though currently grid-disconnected, exterior utility panel and the faint, almost inaudible hum of peak energy efficiency. The fabricated debt collection efforts intensified. Daily letters arrived from the HOA's overly enthusiastic and likely ethically challenged local attorney, each one adding new exorbitant fees: grid non-compliance penalty, illegal energy usage investigation fee, community resource depletion charge. The supposed outstanding amount had ballooned to over $15,000. They were building a paper mountain of false claims, presumably to justify the eviction lawsuit they were preparing. Can you imagine the audacity? Accusing the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar energy company of not being able to pay a few $100s in HOA fees, then trying to extort thousands from her for their own illegal actions? Janelle, meanwhile, was receiving a different kind of mail. Secure, encrypted data drives arrived daily from David Lee's forensic accounting team. She'd spend hours in her brightly lit home office, a fact that infuriated Carol, who sometimes drove by at night to check for darkness, poring over spreadsheets, utility invoices, and HOA financial statements obtained through legal channels. What she was uncovering was a pattern of suspicious overpayments, misallocated funds, and invoices from shell companies, all connected, surprisingly often, to businesses owned by Carol Sterling's extended family. Her own high-level business continued unabated. She was on video calls with German engineers discussing breakthroughs in perovskite solar cell efficiency, with Australian mining magnates about sustainable lithium sourcing for Greenvolt batteries, and with the U.S. Secretary of Energy about national renewable energy policy. Mrs. Gable, straining her ears from her garden, would catch snippets. Terawatt hours, investment tranches, federal subsidies, grid parity. She'd report back to Carol, "She's talking about terawatts and federal subs and grid parity. It's definitely some kind of anti-government plot or a massive financial scam. She's more dangerous than we thought." Carol, whose understanding of energy was limited to flipping a light switch and complaining about her electricity bill, readily agreed. This Janelle Brooks woman was clearly a mastermind of something nefarious. One afternoon, a team of technicians in discreet, unmarked vans arrived at Janelle's house. They weren't from the local power company. They were Greenvolt's elite R&D engineers. They were there to install and test a new experimental atmospheric energy harvester Janelle was personally trialing, a device that could literally pull usable energy from the ambient environment. Carol and Mrs. Gable, observing from afar with binoculars, were convinced this was the final proof. "Look at them," Carol hissed. "They're installing some kind of giant antenna. She's stealing power from the air. Or maybe it's a death ray. This woman is unhinged." She immediately called the local police, reporting a suspicious, potentially dangerous device being installed by unknown operatives. Two bewildered police officers arrived, spoke to the Green Volt engineers, who showed them impeccable credentials and permits for experimental technology testing, and left advising Carol once again about an HOA president's limits and the misuse of police resources. Carol was furious, but undeterred. She now had police interference with a legitimate HOA investigation to add to her list of grievances against Janelle. The peak of Carol's campaign of public humiliation came when the HOA officially filed the eviction lawsuit. Notices were plastered not only on Janelle's door, but also on community bulletin boards and lampposts throughout Sterling Estates. They featured Janelle's photo, a grainy shot taken without her permission, her address, and bold accusations of chronic delinquency, illegal utility tampering, and creation of a public nuisance. Carol organized a community solidarity rally outside the HOA clubhouse, where she gave a fiery speech about protecting Sterling Estates from undesirable elements who refused to play by the rules. She announced that the court date was set and that she was 100% confident that this freeloader will soon be removed from our beautiful neighborhood. Janelle received the court summons with an almost serene calm. The lawsuit was riddled with factual errors, based entirely on fabricated claims, and demonstrated a profound ignorance of both civil procedure and basic utility law. But it was the final piece of evidence she needed. That evening, Carol Sterling, puffed up with a sense of impending victory and a desire to deliver one last personal blow, decided to pay Janelle a visit. She marched up to Janelle's front door, a final demand for payment before court action, notice in her hand, flanked by Mrs. Gable and the HOA treasurer, a nervous man named Arthur. She rang the doorbell insistently. Janelle opened the door, her expression polite, almost welcoming. Her house behind her was brightly lit, cool, and filled with the faint sound of classical music. "Ms. Brooks," Carol began, her voice dripping with condescension, "I am here to deliver this final demand in person. You have 24 hours to remit the full $18,752.37 you owe this community, or we will see you in court, and then we will see you on the street." She thrust the notice at Janelle. Janelle took the paper, glanced at it briefly, then met Carol's gaze. A small, enigmatic smile played on her lips. "Mrs. Sterling, Arthur, Mrs. Gable," she said, her voice smooth as silk. "Won't you come in? I believe I have something that might illuminate the situation for you. I was just about to review some financial projections. Perhaps you could offer your expert opinion?" Carol hesitated, surprised by the invitation, but her arrogance quickly won out. A chance to snoop inside the freeloader's house and perhaps gather more evidence of her squalor or deceit? Too good to pass up. "Very well, Ms. Brooks," she said, striding in, her two companions trailing nervously behind. "But don't think a little hospitality will change anything." "Oh, I wouldn't dream of it," Janelle replied, leading them into her spacious, elegantly minimalist living room. A large, state-of-the-art projection screen dominated one wall. "Please, have a seat. The presentation is all queued up." Carol Sterling, Mrs. Gable, and the trembling HOA treasurer, Arthur, sat uncomfortably in Janelle Brooks's elegantly understated living room. The air conditioning hummed quietly, a cool balm against the oppressive afternoon heat, a stark contrast to the sweltering conditions Carol had tried to impose on Janelle. Carol, still clutching the final demand notice, radiated smug impatience. "Well, Ms. Brooks," Carol began, her voice sharp, "we don't have all day. Are you going to show us your supposed financial projections? Or are you finally ready to write that check for what you owe this community before we have you hauled into court and thrown out on your ear?" Mrs. Gable tittered approvingly. Janelle simply smiled, a calm, almost pitying expression. She picked up a remote control. Actually, Mrs. Sterling, I thought we could start with a brief market overview. It's always good to understand the broader financial landscape, don't you think? With a click, the large projection screen on the wall sprang to life. It didn't display spreadsheets. It displayed the unmistakable cover of Forbes magazine. On it, a striking photograph of Janelle Brooks herself, looking powerful and visionary, under the headline, Janelle Brooks, the titan of tomorrow's energy. How Greenvolt's CEO is powering a $7 billion revolution. The silence in the room was absolute, save for the quiet hum of Janelle's independent power system. Carol Sterling's jaw went slack. Her eyes bulged. Mrs. Gable let out a small, strangled gasp. Arthur, the treasurer, looked like he might faint. My name, Janelle said, her voice even and clear, is Janelle Brooks. I am the founder, chairman, and chief executive officer of Greenvolt Energy. We are a global leader in renewable energy technologies, advanced battery storage, and sustainable power solutions, currently valued at just over $7 billion US. She paused, letting the information saturate the stunned atmosphere. The delinquent HOA fees you've been harassing me about? A clerical error on your part, perhaps, or a deliberate fabrication. My finances, I assure you, are quite robust. She gestured around the comfortably cool, brightly lit room. The power you so dramatically and illegally cut from my connection to the city grid? An inconvenience, certainly. A violation of my rights, definitely. But not a crisis. This home, Mrs. Sterling, is a demonstration unit for Greenvolt's most advanced residential off-grid energy solutions. It runs entirely on its own integrated solar array, geothermal exchange, and most importantly, our patented lithium iron phosphate battery storage systems. Systems designed and manufactured by my company. I could power half this neighborhood for a week and not even notice? Carol was ashen. She was visibly trembling, her eyes darting around the room as if seeking an escape route from this sudden, horrifying reality. But you, the videos, the unpaid bills, she stammered. Ah, yes, the unpaid bills, Janelle said, her voice taking on a harder edge. While your campaign against me was based on falsehoods, Mrs. Sterling, my own inquiries into the financial affairs of the Sterling Estates Homeowners Association, particularly regarding the community electricity fund you personally oversee, have unearthed some rather disturbing and very real irregularities. She clicked the remote again. The Forbes cover was replaced by a series of scanned documents, inflated invoices from unknown utility contractors, records of large payments to shell corporations with P.O. box addresses, and complex flowcharts showing funds being diverted from the HOA's utility accounts into other accounts. Accounts ultimately traceable to businesses owned by Carol Sterling's brother-in-law and a very close personal friend. It appears, Mrs. Sterling, Janelle continued, her voice like ice, that while you were so publicly accusing me of being a freeloader and a debtor, you were, in fact, systematically embezzling funds from your neighbors, defrauding the very community you claim to protect. My corporate forensic accounting team, who are rather adept at untangling complex financial webs, have prepared a comprehensive dossier. She paused. This dossier, along with all supporting evidence, has been submitted to the Securities and Exchange Commission's Division of Enforcement and the White Collar Crime Unit of the District Attorney's Office. The Sterling Estates HOA and you personally, Mrs. Sterling, are under active investigation for multiple counts of financial fraud, embezzlement, and mail fraud. As Janelle spoke these last words, there was a firm, authoritative knock on the front door. Janelle, without taking her eyes off the horrified Carol, calmly said, "Excuse me." She opened the door to reveal three individuals in dark, conservative suits, their expressions grim and official. One held up a badge. "Carol Sterling?" the lead investigator asked, his voice devoid of emotion. "We're from the SEC's Enforcement Division, accompanied by detectives from the DA's office. You are under arrest for suspected violations of federal securities law, conspiracy to commit wire fraud, mail fraud, and embezzlement of community funds." Carol let out a piercing shriek. No, it's a lie. She's framing me. This billionaire is framing me. She lunged towards Janelle, but one of the detectives quickly, professionally restrained her. Arthur, the treasurer, had slid from his chair and was now a quivering heap on the floor. Mrs. Gable looked like she'd seen a legion of ghosts. A billionaire, one of the detectives muttered, looking at Janelle with newfound respect. Mrs. Gable, overhearing, gasped, "A billionaire? Oh, Carol, you absolute idiot." As they cuffed a hysterical, sobbing Carol Sterling and a near catatonic Arthur, Janelle looked at the woman who had made her life a misery. "Justice, Mrs. Sterling," she said quietly but with immense power, "has a way of shining a very bright light into very dark corners. You tried to cut off my light. Instead, you've only succeeded in illuminating your own corruption for the entire world to see." Carol was dragged away, still screaming about being framed. The fallout was spectacular. Carol Sterling and several complicit HOA board members, including Arthur, were convicted on multiple counts of fraud and embezzlement. They received significant prison sentences and were ordered to pay hefty restitution. The Sterling Estates HOA, bankrupt and disgraced, was placed into court-ordered receivership, its entire financial structure and leadership overhauled. Janelle Brooks was awarded $4 million in her civil suit for defamation, harassment, and the illegal termination of her utility service. The video Carol had so proudly posted to shame Janelle became an internet sensation for entirely different reasons. It was now viewed as a testament to Carol's own criminal audacity, a viral hit that garnered over 50 million views under titles like HOA Karen Messes with Billionaire CEO Gets Arrested in Style. True to her company's ethos, Janelle Brooks didn't just walk away. She funded a Greenvolt initiative to install state-of-the-art, high-capacity battery storage systems for all of Sterling Estates' common areas, significantly reducing the community's energy costs and reliance on the grid. She also established the Brooks Institute for Sustainable Energy, a nonprofit dedicated to funding research and providing scholarships for young engineers, particularly women and minorities, passionate about renewable technologies. Its charter, naturally, prohibited any individual convicted of financial crimes or abuse of community trust from any form of association. The final scene, years later. Carol Sterling, looking haggard and worn, is working a grueling, low-wage job at a massive polluting coal-fired power plant. The air is thick with dust, and she coughs frequently, her face smudged with grime. A stark, ironic punishment for a woman who tried to control others' access to energy. During a break, she sees a news report on a flickering TV in the grimy break room. Janelle Brooks, looking radiant and powerful, is giving the keynote address at the dedication of a new, solar-powered wing of the Brooks Institute. "Energy is the lifeblood of progress, the light that dispels darkness," Janelle is saying, her voice resonating with passion. "It must be stewarded with wisdom, shared with equity, and never ever used as a weapon of oppression or a tool for personal greed. For when you attempt to cut off another's light, you are only condemning yourself to a deeper, more profound darkness." The camera pans from Carol's despairing, soot-stained face to the gleaming, self-sustaining Brooks Institute, its solar panels shimmering in the sun. Above the entrance, an illuminated sign reads, "Brooks Institute, Sustainable Justice." The imagined audience would erupt. Power move, CEO. Green energy, green justice. Carol got exactly the karma she generated. The victory was not just Janelle's. It was a triumph for clean energy, for accountability, and for a truly sustainable form of justice.